All right, so you need a little help here because I'm sure you don't like the fractions. Just because it's fractions, the process doesn't change, okay? So I want to get this x by itself. So I'm going to box in the 1/3 x because I box in the thing that's closest to x. I want to get rid of this. I want to get rid of that minus 2/3. So remember, to get rid of it, we got to do inverse operations. So what's the opposite of minus 2/3? Plus 2/3. So I'm going to add 2/3 over here. Okay, and the reason I do that is because it eliminates this. I want to eliminate that. So to eliminate it, I've got to do the inverse operation. But also, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Okay, so because I did it plus 2/3 on the left, I've got to add 2/3 over here. Okay, and this is why we write it this way. I know some of you are like, why, Mr. Ted, do we write it this way? We got to show that we're keeping the inequality balanced. Okay, so what happens is this gets eliminated because we added 2/3 to it. Over here, we are going to add these two fractions. Well, first, let me bring down the 1/3 x. Okay, so let me write that down because that's the easy part. Now, over here, we've got to add these two things. Remember, to add fractions, you have to have a common denominator. And because this is 9 and this is 3, I can't add them as they're written. But a common denominator, there is a way I can get from 3 to 9. Okay, so if I want to make this something over 9, I multiply by 3. So what I do to the top, I've also got to do to the bottom. So really, what I'm doing here is instead of adding 2/3, I'm adding 6/9. Okay, so that's really what I've turned into. And the reason I do that is because now I can add these because these two things are the same. Okay, so I bring down the 1 and then I add my tops. So I add 1 plus 6. Well, 1 plus 6 is, of course, 7. And I keep the denominator the same. And I keep the inequality symbol the same. So now, remember, when it's written like this is actually saying I'm multiplying 1/3 times x. Okay, so what's the opposite of multiplying? Well, division. So I divide by 1/3. The left side, that's easy. They eliminate each other. Okay, so I'm just left with x. Okay, so I'm just left with x. Now, where it gets a little bit trickier is over here on this other side. Okay, because this, to our eye, this does not look very nice. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move down my x so that I can make space to show you how this over here, this can be rewritten. Okay, so what I mean by that is when we divide by a fraction, that's actually, we do this thing called multiplying by the reciprocal. And I'm going to tell you what that means in a minute. You guys probably learned it as keep. So we keep this as 1 and 7/9. Change, so we change the division to multiplication. And flip. And the reason we say flip is that's what the word reciprocal means. The word reciprocal means we take this right here and we flip it upside down. So I have 1 and 7/9 times 3/1. That and this up here are the same two things. Okay, they're saying the same answer. They'll get the same answer. But to divide or multiply fractions, I've got to change this to a improper fraction. So remember to do that. We do 9 times 1 and then add it to 7. And we get 16 times 3/1. And so I'll do 16 times 3 and get 48. And then divide that by 9. So really, this down here is 48/9. Now we'll simplify that in a minute. Our inequality symbol. Let's talk about it. Did I divide by negative? No. So remember, is if I'm dividing by positives, I don't change anything about that symbol. I keep it the same. Okay, so it's still going to be that right there. Now, let's worry about this 48 over 9. I've got to change that to an improper or a mixed number, okay, because it is improper. So let's think to ourselves, how many times does 9 go into 48? Well, it goes into it 5 times with 3 over 9ths left over. But of course, 3/9 simplifies to 1/3. So the final answer here is x is greater than 5 and 1/3. Now I know what you're saying. Mr. Tedder, this seems like a long process. And it is, but as long as you follow the process, you'll never go astray, okay? So remember, box in like we did here. Get rid of whatever's behind the x, which is what we did there, okay? So you see that right there. Then do the opposite of multiplying. And if you can, right here, use a decimal or a calculator. Use Desmos if you are able to. I showed you the process of not using Desmos because you may have it on the inactive part. But if you can use Desmos, type this in. Now, I will tell you, when you type it in Desmos, you've got to change this to an improper fraction. Okay, you've got to change this to that. Okay, so this is how we solve the problems that have fractions.